When my clients say my data's not ready for AI, I say, cool, you might not be here in 2 years then.
AI was pitched as a massive cost saver. The reality, only 7% of companies have actually managed to scale it.
It's not because the technology is not good enough.
Leaders are navigating between embracing AI and preserving what makes their business unique. And many are asking, is AI actually creating measurable business value, or are we just spending billions chasing the next big thing?
The world changes when things are cheaper, faster, better. And the one key part here is that it's not cheaper.
Akan Lyons, the marketing and growth chiefs of Demandbase next-gen platform at Salesforce, Tapestry, and McKinsey dig into how they're balancing the tension of AI hype versus real business impact. I'm Ruth Umoh, and this is Fortune Next to Lead.
What if you could have your own personal sous chef? That's exactly what every Williams-Sonoma customer has, thanks to Salesforce. With Agentforce, every meal's perfected, every table set, every holiday's handled. Recipes, techniques, tools, every answer at your fingertips. This is how Williams-Sonoma found the ultimate recipe for customer success.
If you made it here, you already know Cannes is unlike anywhere else. Thousands of marketing leaders in one town, more invitations than hours in a day, pitches on every corner, panels in every hotel, and no shortage of very confident opinions about the future of AI. We have tools, we have dashboards, pilots, announcements, but eventually every investment has to answer the same question. Can you prove return on investment? Lean in and let's have a conversation that is hopefully a little more honest than most conversations about AI. So with that, let's meet our esteemed panelist. Sitting directly to my left, Torres, SVP of Advertising Platform, Demandbase. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Desiree Motamedi, CMO of a next-gen platform. Welcome to you.
Thank you.
Sandeep Seth, by the way, huge fan of Coach, great leather. President of International and Chief Growth Officer at Tapestry. Welcome.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, Shelley Stewart, Senior Partner and Global Leader in my personal marketing confidants at McKinsey. All right, let's jump right into things. Let's start with the reality check. Everyone is talking about AI transformation. I'm curious to hear from the entire panel how much of what's happening right now is real, measurable business impact? How much do you think is hype? Let's get spicy. Al, please kick things off.
Well, first off, just so everybody knows, it's not AI, it's Al. So I've gotten the whole time, like somebody would put their name as AI going into.
To be fair, I put periods when in my notes had AI, so I wouldn't,
So do I, so people know. I think there's a combination of both. It's a real thing. It is changing the world, but I also think it is perceived to be moving a lot faster than the reality, especially within the world of the enterprise. And one of those realities, I think, actually came out a few weeks ago when Uber talked about token maxing, where it was like we've spent our entire budget, expected budget, in 4 months versus the entire year. And so people are using it, people are adapting, but the baseline is not there. And understanding where they need to go, how they're going to use it, how it's going to change their environment, the role changes, all of that is new, and every organization is different and structured different. So it is changing, but it is going to change slower than people expect, but it is going to change things quite drastically.
It's interesting you say it's going to change slower than people expect. I feel like a lot of people think it's going to do the opposite and change at a rapid clip.
Yeah, I think, when I joined in media 20 years ago, TV was dead. And I think digital just overtook TV last year. So, things will change and it will adapt, and you need to be at the forefront of doing something. So you can't not do it, but I also think you have to have realistic expectations as to how it's going to impact the business.
Yeah. And we'll give a future or forward-looking eye to that in a moment. Desiree, I'm curious to hear from you.
So a lot of the CMOs I've been speaking to, they're trying every platform today, from all the different agents to anything from lead generation to brand, digital, you name it basically. And so the thing is, they're still in this testing environment. They're trying to see what's working. And what I always say, and what I've been kind of also asking them as well too, what's working? What are you seeing? And I always tell them, start small. Do not try to boil the ocean, because most people are like, I want to fix the entire lead generation funnel. And you're like, wait a second, start with a small example of what you want to see and then try to see the results and go from there. But I think everyone's in just this learning phase right now. It's really still, the early days. But I think give it a year. When they start to see a little bit of the success, then they're going to really start to scale it across the entire org. So
it's interesting. You say start small. Give us for instance, what's a great starting point at the most nascent stage?
Because a lot of marketers have access to very specific systems. Let's say if it's like Marketing Cloud from like Salesforce, you still have all that data, your customer data. You're able to kind of do a very small example because you have that data already at your fingertips. So create a way to do mass scale email with that data set that you have and see if you see the results that you want from it first. And I think that's the problem. They want to go, I want to connect all my systems first. I want to do all these things before I can actually deploy. I think that's a mistake. You start with something that sees that little incrementality and then move from there, basically.
Sure. Let me start with first a disclaimer. I know nothing about AI. On that, I'm kind of the Jon Snow of AI for those who are fans of Game of Thrones. Look, for us, Tapestry, as you talked about, a parent company for Coach and Kate Spade, our focus is on the consumer. And really our vision is to really give consumers the power to express their style and their story to the world on that. And so we are not starting with an AI strategy. We're not starting by saying, how do I become an AI company? Because that's not what we're going to become. What we want to be is a company that provides the best consumer experience in everything. And then we embed AI as an enabler to those experiences, right? So yes, there are a lot of real examples of how we are leveraging AI at scale, not in a small way. And I would say it's across the value chain, from the front end of AI helping us with consumer research and insights. And we can now go from insight to campaign sometimes in a week, which would take 3 to 6 months, right, on that. And we have real-life cases. That doesn't mean AI is developing the campaign for us. AI is enabling the process of doing that. To AI, which is embedded in media, and how we're doing media forecasting. Not just media buying, I'm talking media forecasting and how we use MMM models on that. To bespoke AI models that we've created within the company that's helping us harness the power of data. I mean, Tapestry is 90% direct-to-consumer company. We have a lot of data over the years. How do we leverage that data to power our store associates to create better experience in the store, on that. And finally, in the back end, in supply chain, how AI can help us with inventory, how AI can help us with allocation in the stores. So there are many use cases, but again, to the point everyone's making, it's not just embedding AI in the current systems. We have to rethink the systems, we have to rethink the organization, and if we just put it for the sake of another gimmicky item, it actually creates more friction.
Quick follow-up for you. 3 to 6 months, you're saying, to get to a campaign. Historically, now it's about 1 week. What are you doing with that saved time? I often hear CEOs in particular say, our employees can focus on more high-value human activities, whatever the F that means. What does that mean at Tapestry?
Look, a lot of things on that. One of the things is the need for content is growing up exponentially, right? I mean, and you can't add unlimited resources to do that. So we are able to focus on creating more experiences, right? And again, it's not just content. I mean, we have to create experience in our store, our website, our rethink our e-commerce experience. So how do we leverage our resources to start moving faster, right, on that? And look, Coach as a brand, as you've seen, has created this resonance with the younger consumer over the last few years. And we build that by really going deep understanding the consumer. Now, we're meeting hundreds of consumers on a regular basis across the world, whether it's in the US, whether it's in China, Korea, doing deep ethnographic research with them, where we spend 2 to 3 hours with them in their homes, understanding their life, understanding their style, understanding what self-expression means to them. AI is now enabling us to do this at scale. We had never done that. So qualitative at the scale of quantitative, right, on that. So that's where we are putting time to really understand even better, get the right insights, and translate them into content, into experiences, into products that can help us.
Yeah. Shelley, I'm curious to hear from you because you're not only CMO at McKinsey, but McKinsey is also working with the largest organizations globally on this very topic to bring their marketing functions into the future. So what are you seeing internally and certainly as you talk to some of your clients?
First of all, you're my favorite journalist, as you know, so thank you.
High praise coming from you.
Thank you. I think I'm always shocked when I talk to people in technology and they make predictions like 40% of, the workforce will be displaced or all these jobs are going away. I mean, the reality of it is, like, enterprise level change is really hard. I think people conflate what technology is capable of and the journey to get there. And so I think you are still in the experimentation phase and you're seeing a lot of really interesting things. But still in my clients, I see very few that are wholesale redesigning workflows in an AI native way. And I think we will get there. I think we will look back in 15 years and say, wow, like we've come a long way, but it's going to take time. That being said, one of the biggest concerns that I have for my clients is actually incumbency is a pretty precarious place to be right now. Because if you can spin up something that is AI native, there's real risk to traditional business models.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning, if you are in a service, some sort of a service business, and everything's been all good for the last 20 years, it's actually quite hard to change, as I was saying. It's hard to get your people there. You got to make the investment. You got to pilot and scale. But other folks can spin up business models pretty quickly because of technology. And so that creates a real tension point and risk. But look, again, we will look back in 15 to 20 years and say a lot has changed. It's hard. I'm still in boardrooms where our clients are debating whether they have, 1,000 Copilot licenses or 1,500.
Yeah.
That's pretty different than we're gonna get rid of 80% of our people.
Across industries, industry agnostic?
I think it's industry agnostic. Of course, you have people who are on the edge and leading, but I think they're precisely that. They're on the edge. It's a distribution like all things, but we are far from. We've redesigned all the major workflows and processes, and it's AI native now. We don't need humans, and I don't think we'll ever get to the point where we don't need humans. But it's moving much slower. I mean, you can even see that in the conversation here. Last year there was much more hype, and now we're getting a little bit more normal and recognizing that it'll take time.
Yeah. Desiree, you look like you wanted to say something very quickly before you do. Shelley, you said that most companies are still in the experimentation phase. As you look into your crystal ball, how much longer do you think they'll be in this infancy stage before they're really executing and thinking of AI as a growth strategy and providing new revenue streams?
Yeah.
Truly transformative.
By the way, I like that you said revenue streams because the big focus is on cost and productivity, at least as it gets covered often in the media. But I do
Not
think,
Fortune, though.
Not Fortune. I mean, as I said, my favorite journalist. But I actually think the real differentiator is how does AI change the growth equation? But I do think we are getting to the point where people have seen things that work and are scaling. But I think we're still in another couple of years of people experimenting, trying to understand what works, and then scaling, and then reimagining domains and things like that. So I think we have another couple of years, but you are starting to see more turn the corner. I see some of my excellent marketers from my team here, and we're turning the corner, I'd like to believe. So you're starting to see it.
I just want to add to that because the other thing that we all forget is that all of websites today were made for humans. We need to start to build websites that are also now made for agents. And so you have to start thinking about that metadata layer behind your website so that agents understand, because they have a job to be done. That's what they basically do. You're tasked to do something, and then they have to find a solution for you. And as people are using these frontier models to search for things and look for things, that's an example of how CMOs have to think differently. The way that we traditionally have built workflows or the web, experiences or commerce experiences, it now has to have the lens of agents. And so that's just like a really perfect example that I'm seeing in the conversations today.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk buy-in because no CMO exists in a vacuum. You have a number of internal stakeholders. What's the most compelling AI use case you've personally taken to your CEO, your board, your executive community? Really walk us through, provide us with some color, and why and how did you get it funded? Any specific examples, any anecdotes?
I feel like everyone's looking at me. I'm like, to me, I think bringing the insights from an ROI perspective, being able to tap into different data sources in a pretty much real-time basis to be able to prove out your thesis or idea is a game changer. Where it would take, let's talk to finance, let's get RevOps, let's prove out from external sources. You could literally tap into that insight immediately. You still have to bring the story, right? You still have to go back and say, did we have the influence? What was the return? And I think the way I look at it is the world changes when things are cheaper, faster, better. And the one key part here is that it's not cheaper, right? And so that is like the nuance that I think that people are talking about, but I don't think that we've realized. Like, we know it's faster, we know it's better, it's not cheaper. And so how do you leverage that so that you actually get an ROI? And that's the part I think everyone's trying to still figure out.
So how do you leverage that so you get ROI?
Honestly, experimentation right now. Like, we're learning. I don't want to pretend that we're any different. We're learning. We're all in. We monitor the usage of AI across every employee to see, are you using it? We're not looking at how you're using it per se, but we want you using it because we're all learning. And from the team up, it's, hey, we did this, and the feedback loop is incredible, but we are learning. And so we're learning across various different platforms to learn which ones work best, for what aspect of the business. But it is a learning phase, and we're learning as quickly as we can so that we can provide that to our customers. And I think everyone's in the same boat, to be honest.
So again, with my own team, because we basically have access to all the tools, we use, Claude Code, we have Gemini internally. We also drink our own champagne. We use Slack, we use Slackbot. We're very lucky because we have all the tools that we want to use. But something that I've been really pushing my teams to think about when they're building any agentic experience, it's not just shipping it and putting it out to your teammates. You need the infrastructure. So an example is you want to host it in a secure environment that it's like VPN enabled so that it's not on a local URL that anyone can take a look at because that's very scary for your organization. You want to have login so you can see who's logging into these experiences. You want analytics to see what they're actually doing in these agent experiences as well too. And the number one thing that I tell my team is you need a feedback loop. You need to make sure that you're getting feedback on the experience, that they're constantly evolving it, that they're getting that information in, because you don't just ship something and then it just goes away. You got to constantly make it better and better. So those are like the 4 components that I've been really pushing the teams to build.
Yeah, I'll start with the point you made, Shelley. Anything we are doing, we first link it to financial outcomes, right? So we're not doing things for the sake of doing, and this is not just for AI. This is, we always talk about, we don't open stores just for marketing. We open stores to build business, and we use AI to build business for us. So I'll take a couple of use cases, and I talked some of them, right? How we're using AI in our entire supply and demand planning. It has a very clear business outcome of growth. It's not just about efficiency and saving. It's how can I get better allocation? How can I be less out of stock? And what does that mean in terms of lost sales and how many $100 million I will generate behind that? So there is a very definitive case which the CFO and CEO cannot deny on that. But even, the other example, Al, that you talked about, how do you use data and insight at scale within the company using AI? We've announced this a couple of months back. We created our own IP with this Mira that we call, which we're using large language models to create this tool that is in the hands of every employee now to get daily insights. We're getting so much data from every store across the world. Now we can analyze it to a store level, which SKU is performing how well. And the system generates insights without having to do tedious work, which is then informing everything from design of a product to the supply chain of it. And each of these are very correlated to business outcomes for us. So I think in each case that we are talking about, it really starts with what's the consumer problem we are solving, what's the financial outcome we are looking for, and how we're going to do that. Now, that doesn't mean we don't test and learn, right, on that. There's always a small budget that in the 70-20-10 framework of 10% is there for us to go learn on that. But majority of our investment goes in business cases and solving business problems.
I think I know your answer because you are the only chief growth officer. All the others are CMOs, but I do feel like they're very interchangeable these days. Should CMOs be accountable for cost savings? Should their success message be around cost savings or revenue expansion?
So, surprise, I started as a CMO at Coach, and now I'm the Chief Growth Officer. I've been in marketing most of my career.
Slight pivot.
Right, on that. And I've led businesses and P&L, and here I am as the Chief Growth Officer and President International. I think CMO's single objective is to grow TSR for the company. I mean, that's...
Everyone's nodding. You're all in agreement.
Yeah.
Quick show of hands. Does everyone here agree? Yeah? Okay.
Right. And that's how I started. I mean, I started, at P&G and worked there. And that was a singular thing that we would start with. If you're doing something, how does this build value for the company versus, here's another creative ad campaign. Of course, you need magic and logic to build that, and that always comes to life. And that's the premise, especially in Tapestry and luxury, on how do we do it. But if you're not focused, in fact, I have this conversation not just with marketing teams, I have this conversation with my HR partners in how are you building value for the company. If there's an organizational restructure we're doing, what growth opportunities will that unlock for us, and how do we quantify and measure that growth is the singular focus on how we work.
Perfect segue to you, Shelley. Certainly what you're seeing at McKinsey, but also McKinsey recently published research, I believe on Monday, right here in Cannes. And it seems to me, the research suggested that CFOs are thinking productivity, efficiency, cost savings, very capital allocation centered, and CMOs actually want to focus on growth and transformation. What are you seeing in that regard?
I don't think my CFO's here, so I'll speak freely. You can't cut your way to prosperity. So like for sure, productivity is important, but growth is the way you create long-term value for a company and in society. And so I completely take the point that if a CFO is going to allocate a budget, it's got to have a positive ROI in some time frame. But the real shift has to be, how do we leverage technology, as I said earlier, to change the growth equation, to allow me to outcompete my peers. And the reality of it is, AI gives you the ability to really mine customer insights in real time, to get hyper-personalized, whether you're B2B or B2C, in a way that is very cost-effective. And so I do think the organizations that lean into how do we leverage this technology to engage and interact with our customer value proposition in a different way, they will win. And I'm not saying that you don't need to get productivity, but you can't cut your way to prosperity. There's only so much cutting that you can do. And so I think that's really important. And I do think that there are lots and lots and lots of interesting use cases for AI, whether it be in marketing or other functions, but you don't unlock the real value until you start to reimagine, rewire the whole domain. So point solutions.
And that looks like
great.
what?
So it looks like, today you might use an AI solution. So one of the things I oversee is publishing at McKinsey, and we publish a large amount of content. I want to publish a little bit less, by the way, but and you can use AI to, proofread, to do a red team, to identify political risk in the things and that's fantastic. That has value. But how do I reimagine from idea to dissemination all of publishing, leveraging technology? Those are two very different things. And one is valuable, the other is transformative. And I think that's the journey that I think many organizations are on. Is we're still using point solutions to do interesting things, but not yet say how do I start with the idea for something I'm going to write the insight generation, the analytics, all the way through to getting it to the people I want to read it. What does that AI journey look like? And that's the journey we're on.
Let's pivot to data. I think one hindrance, or at least an excuse that it's a hindrance that we often hear from CMOs, is that their data is just too messy. They're unsure where to begin. Well, I'm curious, first of all, if you all think that is an excuse. And then let me quickly play devil's advocate, because I'm sure a lot of marketers are saying, well, if our baseline consumer insights are flawed, overlaying AI on top of it just scales that problem. So how do you know whether you're accelerating better decisions versus, automating bad decisions based on bad data? What's a viable and minimum amount of data you need to have? And maybe, Desiree, you can kick things off this time. We'll start in the middle.
I've been seeing this really interesting trend, even talking to folks here, is that the relationship between CMOs and CIOs has become a lot closer now, because again, these CMOs are relying on trying to get these systems to talk to each other from a data standpoint. But it goes back to where you have the fastest control of the data sets that you have. Like, again, there's so many different marketing systems today, but if you're able to start with something small and then grow from there. But I'm gonna tell you, the thing that's kind of exciting now because of AI, I think this excuse of the data part of not being clean, quality, governance, all that stuff, it's going to go a lot faster now. I can tell you already there's, from even headless, which is really exciting now that you don't have to log into a UI, have months and months of setup, doing the implementations. That's going to go so much faster now from an AI standpoint. So I feel like probably in the next year or so, we're going to see a lot of CMOs being able to move fast. And that's kind of exciting. So I'm really looking forward to that future.
What are your thoughts? And what's one use case you've seen deliver ROI despite imperfect data?
I think we all know data is imperfect. And it's something you can't ignore going forward. So you have to continue to think about how do you enrich it and leverage it. But the reality is, whether it's humans looking at it or AI, you still need to move forward. And so I think this case of productivity is, how do you have the human element, the contextual intelligence that the human brings to that data set to say, okay, things look odd or things look weird, but I got this answer in 10 minutes versus spending 10 weeks, gives you the ability to focus on that strategic stuff, which is, does this make sense for the business and how we know the business operates today? So you have to continue to improve your data. That's going to be a never-ending thing, and that is the reality of it. You still have to move forward. You have to get those insights faster. But then you can leverage the experience of your team to be able to go and say, okay, does this make sense, and where do we need to make those tweaks going forward? And so it's obviously working with partners that you trust, partners that actually give you value, I think, other than just tapping into their data. So I think although the agentic world is a real thing and that will move the needle faster, you're still going to need people on the other side who are experts within their specific field to be able to give you insight into what you need to be looking at.
And when you say partners, you're referring to whom?
Various vendors, consultants, agencies, whatever it may be. I think they're in the better position than they've ever been, given everything and how fast everything is moving. And I think the trust factor of, again, your agency, consultants, vendors, partners, is going to be more important. That the whole idea of trust with AI, I think it's actually trust with the partners first, who are experts in their relevant part of the AI journey.
Yeah. Shelley, let me turn to you. McKinsey research suggests that AI could unlock enormous value. Please feel free to give us a specific number. Yet fewer than 10% of organizations have successfully scaled AI across marketing. What's the number one reason for that gap?
Let me go back to this data point, and then I'll come back to this. I've never, in my 15 years at McKinsey, even pre-AI, I've never gone into an organization where the data was ready to do anything. So it's fine. But when my clients say, today, my data's not ready for AI, I say, cool, you might not be here in 2 years then. Because this goes back to the risk of being an incumbent. And so you have to move, right? It's not perfect data, but you have to move. The reality of it is, organizational change at scale is hard. I go back, the reason that we're 10% are getting value is not because the technology is not good enough. I go back again, what the technology is capable of and how you actually move an organization to use it at scale, those are two very different things. And there's all sorts of reasons people are don't adopt, right? They're afraid. They don't understand it. And so for every dollar you invest in the technology, you need to be investing $3, $4, $5 in the change management and enablement part of the AI journey. And so the folks that are in that 10% that are outperforming recognize that it's not just about this, AI solution. It's how did I actually bring the people in that function on a journey? How did I empower them, not just with the technology, but with the understanding for why this is necessary? And I think that's really hard, because when you start talking about change management and people, it feels soft. It's really easy to be like, I'm gonna write this check for this technology solution. That would be wasted money if you're not investing significantly more dollars on a relative basis in getting the humans to understand how to use it and why it'll make their life better.
I actually want to circle back to that momentarily, Shelley, but I first do want to touch on the expense aspect. I was recently chatting with Airbnb's brilliant CFO, Ellie Mertz, and she, there's a question every executive eventually faces, how do you know when to double down on an AI pilot, AI experimentation, or when to walk away? At what point does an AI pilot stop being experimentation and just start being a waste of money? How do you determine when you're just throwing good money after bad? Anyone?
I think if you don't see results with like a month's time.
A month?
A month. And I'm going to tell you why. Wow. Because you want to start to see incrementality early on. You want to see that it's actually doing something for you. And you're right, it might be a little bit longer than that, but you want to see something, some signal that's saying, okay, let's give it some more time and keep going. There's been a lot of stuff that I've been playing with from tools that if I don't see anything in the first few weeks of things, then I'm like, why am I invested in this? And so I think it's really important because, guys, we don't have time. Things are moving so fast. There's better tools. There's better things out there. And we have to keep trying to see that little signal that gives us like, okay, this might actually work. So I think that's where we're at this point.
Either of you.
Yeah, no, I can jump in. Look, we are obsessed with solving the consumer's problem, right? And so that is still valid, even if the experiment fails, right? So the way we are focusing on is really starting with a very defined consumer problem, and how does that resolve the brand growth within that? So if a one how does not work, we pivot to another one, because the problem still stays and we have to hack on that. So what we are trying to do is doing quick iterations, not building full prototypes, even kind of prototyping and trying to understand, is this how going to work, right? So the strategy or the objective does not change, the how evolves. And that's why you have to do fast iteration. You're not going to pour millions of dollars on those iterations. Like, what are those $5,000 solutions that you're going to test and learn quickly and go there? So it depends. Now, in some cases, you can do it in a few days. In some cases, it could take longer. But again, our objective is always, let's hack the problem. Like, let's get to an answer in the end.
It's like ads.
Seems like everyone's titillated based on that response. That's an ad. Maybe Desiree, you go next.
Yeah, just really quickly. It's like ads. When you put an ad out there in that first week, you want to see some data point that's showing the direction that you want to go into. It's the same thing when it comes to AI solutions as well too. That's why it's exactly what you said. It's iteration. You're like seeing that it has the potential. It's exactly that same kind of mindset that we all have to think about with trying these things out.
Really quickly, she gave a month. How long are you given?
Me? It depends. There is no time frame.
That's a cop-out answer.
No, I know. I mean, it's not a cop-out answer because if I look at certain media things, I can in a week come and say, hey, this doesn't work. I'm going to try. And sometimes even daily you can make those decisions. But if I'm designing a supply chain, it's going to take us a bit longer to answer that question. So again, it really depends on which business process you're impacting. Now, to the point Shelley was making, a supply chain kind of a solution requires massive organizational change, right? And you're not going to do that overnight. So again, we have to be contextual to the business problem, the magnitude of the problem you're solving, and how much time it takes. Again, to me, nothing changes on how businesses should think of solving problems just because it's AI, right? We're trying to create a whole ghost of AI here. But the reality is, our jobs in whichever business we are is to understand our consumers, our customers, and really create solutions for them. AI is another way to do that, and that's how we're looking at it.
And you do say nothing changes, but I do feel that there's this frenzy to be the first to be fastest. It seems far more accelerated than any other technological change.
I mean, for me, it's more important to get it right than be the first. I mean, we were not the first in the world to make handbags, but we make the best handbags and people love them.
Hey, I like
Mic
that.
drop.
I'll give you one failure mode that I've seen, which is if any AI project is primarily IT-led, it's not going to translate to the kind of long-term, and it's with all due respect to people in technology, these things need to be business and domain-led, because the folks that are in the business running the domains know the business problem. And too often, I've seen situations where the board has pressured the executive team to show progress on AI, and then they say, okay, Mrs. CIO, you go out and do some projects. And then they spin up these wonderful tools. I mean, brilliant tools. And then they hand them over to the business, and the business is like, I don't need this. What is this? And so it's got to start with that interlock between what is the actual business need I'm solving, and then how does technology help to address that workflow?
I was just going to comment, I'm in the world of B2B, and B2B is slow. Let's be honest. B2B is slow. Consumer, you can get readings much faster. So in the B2B world, I think, whether it's by department or by group, what's the outcome you're aiming for, you need to have that goal sooner to be able to make that determination, because the reality is you're not going to get the full external outcome fast enough to be able to make those decisions. So some of it is a, educated guess. But the reality is you have to have an outcome for what you're trying to do that has a shorter window than like once a quarter, because you might take 12 months before you get the actual reality of the outcome that you thought might happen. And so you need to kind of look at the market, you look at your industry, you look at your competitors, you look at your partners. Again, I think the value of everybody being in the same spot, which is a massive unknown, but it's the, I'm forgetting his name at the moment, but the unknown unknowns, or the known unknowns. We all know we're in the same spot, so we need to leverage each other to figure out what is the best path forward for our business, given, our mode, how we operate, where we are we global, are we, just in the US, wherever it may be. But end of the day, it is about the outcome that you are trying to achieve with that AI tool to be able to show that there was value in doing this, and so we're going to continue doing it. That may change 12 months from now, but at least for the expectation of what we were trying to achieve, that was achieved during this project or pilot.
Another example back to the month, because I think that's really important, is that we have a customer I'm meeting with in July. They want to start a POC on a Monday, and they want to finish by Friday. So 5 days to do a build. And what we are putting in place is every week we want to see the incrementality of the value that they're getting out of it, because they want to make a quick decision. And the reason I bring it's because of headless, and the idea that now that you can actually use any of our solutions through AI, through any IDE of your choice. So like Salesforce, you can connect an MCP, connect with natural language, being able to do the things that you want to do. That's why they're so excited, because they can go faster than they've ever been able to go before.
I'm hearing a through line, especially at the end. Shelley brought up the fact that things break down when you're IT focused. You've certainly also said that you're focused on the customer. You're not focused just on the technology. I've certainly found efficiency and growth very numbers heavy, relatively easy to measure. I think what's harder to understand is what AI means for things that have traditionally driven value, which is creativity, differentiation, human connection. Sandeep, let me hear from you, because you're in the luxury space, which I think is hugely interesting. It's often built on scarcity, on human craftsmanship. AI is built on scale, it's digital, it feels more sterile. How do you reconcile those ideas?
Absolutely. I mean, this is a perfect question for our brands. We are creating human brands, and the most important aspect of that is the human and the human creativity that we are leading in there. And I don't see a world where AI or technology will replace human creativity. It will aid human creativity. And we're using that in design in many ways on that. At the end, the thinking of the design starts with pen and paper, right? Now, what we can do is iterate much faster with technology and the models that are available, cut the time to getting prototypes, on that, which allows us to be even more creative and get more designs out there in front of the consumer. So we're using AI to test those designs on that. So whether we're talking product creation, whether we're talking content creation, I believe that human-led creativity is still going to be the most important aspect of our business, or I would say any business. I've heard this phrase from Jack Ma, which I really like, where he says that machines can be smarter than humans, but humans will always be wiser than machines, right? So how do we bring that wisdom? How do we bring the emotional aspect of what these brands? I mean, at the end, Coach is an emotional entity. Kate Spade is an emotional entity, and that emotion has to start with humans.
This is a bit of a philosophical question. Do you think AI can ever get to a point where it creates that emotional resonance, that brand desirability?
I'm sure it can aid in that. I have no idea. I can't. I don't have a crystal ball to predict. I did try writing poetry over Christmas for all my family using AI. Didn't work too well. Maybe I didn't prompt it very
Your children, your family all know that their Christmas cards were written by AI.
On that didn't work out too well on that, so I had to go back to pen and paper. No, jokes aside, look, it will continue to aid it. I'm quite confident it's not replacing. And again, Coach is built on 85 years of that craftsmanship that our design teams bring in. We take hours to craft every bag. Every bag is made over 3 to 4 hours of handcraft, and I think that doesn't change.
Yeah. One more quick follow-up before I expand it to the rest of the panel and not be so granular. You mentioned at the top of the conversation you're seeing huge success in using AI in the supply chain. Make that real for us. Where are you seeing wins?
So look, I mean, we have a complex supply chain across the world where we're sourcing leather from one part and, we're manufacturing in multiple SPs on that and then allocating to over 1,000 stores across the world. I think really linking this entire system end to end using AI has really given us massive improvement in our forecasting abilities and avoiding out of stock on that, right? So this is where, you can do whatever you want manually. The number of SKUs, it's impossible in a human way to kind of do that. So again, fashion is seasonal. It has newness. AI can't solve for all of it, but also a large part of our assortment is core evergreen that stays. And it's really, I would say, quantifying into a massive growth impact on how do we do that. And it eventually goes back to serving our consumer. We don't want a consumer to come to our store or go online to look for that black tabby and not find it, right, where they're looking for. So that's where it's been a big enabler for us. Again, we are in the process of implementing many models of it. Some of them are already there that we've kind of put there where we work both internally and with our external partners to build this up.
I'd love for you, Shabi, to answer this question because I think, especially with the renaissance of AI, marketers have to work far more intimately with their chief product officers, their CIOs, as you said earlier, Desiree, their chief tech officers, whatever the title is. Walk me through how you're collaborating with them and using the consumer insights, the customer insights to augment the product, the service, the tangible thing that you're selling. Al, let's kick off with you.
Yeah, the coordination at all the levels, I think, is something that I think everyone is focused on. There is no the silos don't work anymore, right? And so you need to be thinking about engineering to product, to execution, to customer touch points, getting that feedback loop. And before it was like a product works on products, marketing works on marketing, sales works in sales. And so, we have daily stand-ups at the executive level.
Make it real for us. Give us a recent conversation.
Such a Ruth question.
Having worked with many engineers over the years, engineers love building the newest, best thing. It is not necessarily the thing that our customers want. And so working with our head of engineering, that sounds like a great opportunity. It sounds really cool, and I know this is the newest language or whatever it may be. Our customers aren't asking for that, and I don't think they want that. And we had that from customer conversations and market research. I was like, we can't just go build the newest, coolest thing. We're not Anthropic, right? We don't just build everything. And so we need to really kind of hone in. And so but that conversation can happen today that I don't think happened 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But we need to be aligned. And so we're having those on a daily basis. Like, do we build this? Do we market that? How do we think about changing our go-to-market? And so those things are real time. They're daily. Yeah, and it's a moving target, to be honest.
So I'm going to do two parts. Number one, I think the best thing that has been the way that I've been able to talk to our CIO and just move fast. Our teams are vibe coding and they're building these experiences. And so we go to our CIO team and say, if we had this data, look what we could build. So it's like a real life example of like seeing something real and tangible. And we said, if you just plug this in, imagine what we could do. And that's allowed us to go so fast because everyone's trying to basically prove out what they want to build. And I think it's been the best way to make it happen. There's some folks here probably in the back, they're like, yeah, Des has done that. And then on the second thing, we are a very customer-centric company. Our product officers, all of our GMs, we speak to customers on a daily basis. Even here, it's a constant iteration of what they need, their challenges, how we can solve. And I have to tell you, I think we're really good at that. We always take those signals and just make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, look, we talk a lot about brand building at Tapestry, and brand building is a team sport. It's not an individual sport. So everything has to come together. And I'll give you two examples. One, real time. I mean, we're sitting here in Cannes, and we have our IT folks here. We have our marketing folks here. I'm from the growth team. We came here as a multifunctional team, not like, this is a CMO forum, and we just need marketing teams out here because we want to together understand the insight. I'll give you a real life example of how we're putting insight and consumer learnings in the hands of every function in the company. Like, we were trying to hack a problem in our store experience and saying, how does the store experience, enable our younger consumers, especially Gen Z, to interact differently with our brand? And we brought in our IT team, we brought in our commercial teams together, we brought in our marketing teams and our sales teams, and we all sat together saying, hey, here is a consumer problem that we're defining together now. How are we going to go solve that? So this is, part of the ethos we're building in the company, that brand building will only happen if the entire ecosystem of the company comes together, and if everyone is equipped with the same insight, right? And the single truth that the data can provide us. So we're all working towards one mission, not by department mission. So at the end, we're putting singular KPIs for everyone versus, sub KPIs for different people.
So if I start from this AI reimagine, rewire moment, if I sit in my seat, is a huge opportunity for firms like McKinsey. I'll stipulate that because what is possible is pretty incredible. So what are the challenges that we have? One, we need to convince people of the art of the possible. And then two, we need to convince them that we, as McKinsey, can go on that journey with them. And so what I'm very focused on from a marketing and brand perspective is storytelling. The only way you can actually do that is if you tell stories, and by the way, Salesforce does this very well. Tell stories about how you've transformed some enterprise in the context of something they're trying to do. Like if I walk into a meeting or a marketing material and I'm like, AI is a big opportunity. Let me help you build this ontology so then you can then have a digital twin and then we can build analytic workbenches that can then like
Sold.
yeah, it's like what are you talking about? By the way, and most people are not technologists. Yeah. So they're like, yeah, ontology, that makes sense, yeah, and they don't know what you're talking about. And so you have to tell stories like, okay, you have 10,000 retail stores, and one of your biggest gating factors is your performance is highly contingent upon how good your district managers are. Let me tell you how AI can transform the way your district manager spends their week. How they can log into whatever the application is, and that thing in natural language can tell them that they need to spend time at these 4 stores for these 10 reasons, what it's worth, the conversations to have. And so very focused on not AI for AI's sake, not analytic workbenches, ontology, and agents, but how does this change the lives of humans in a way that makes your business better? And that's the real challenge that we're very focused on.
Let me paint a scenario for you all. Let's say your CFO, perhaps your CEO, comes to you and says, you guys are doing great work. I want to give you $10 million to invest in AI. And however, they told you that next year's budget would depend entirely on the results. Where would you immediately place that bet now? Shelley, let's start with you at the end.
You know, I heard this question asked to a slightly successful business person that happens to be in the semiconductor business.
Just slightly successful.
Yeah. And his answer was, if the CEO's asking about ROI on AI, you need a new CEO, which is obviously not the right answer. But look, I think there are many use cases where you can find some productivity that justifies the ROI, right? I mean, you can automate functional processes in finance, in HR, in marketing, whatever. But I think the plot is lost. Like, I genuinely believe, like, you have to take, I get it, we have shareholder pressure. We don't, we're private, so. But there is pressure from CFOs, from investors to show productivity. But I do worry that you can actually lose the plot on how can I actually transform my business model if you fall into this trap of, I got to show the ROI in a month or 2 months. And so the middle ground is, yeah, find some productivity opportunities. But if you leave it at that, I think you'll have missed the plot. And I think you run the risk, again, that I talked about before, which is disruption from more AI native, AI forward organizations.
Yeah, I mean, you know our CFO well, Scott Trow, and he's asked this question to me many times, even when I was CMO, like, where do you need money? And
So we need a new CFO.
Yeah, here's another 10 million there. Look, my answer to that is I don't need the money. I mean, I need to first define the problem, and then I'll come to you on where do I need the investment on versus pouring it. But if I were to answer your question, and this kind of links back to an earlier question you said of creating the right data layers, I think that's where the investment should go if that is not there. Now, Tapestry, very early in its journey back in 2019 in the acceleration program, took the bet on investing in data and the data architecture, and that's a competitive advantage today. But we continue to build on that competitive advantage because the more you have your semantic layer in place, the faster you can adopt AI to solve the business problems on that. So yeah, I mean, that would be the one place that I would say we should continue to invest, even though we are ahead on that, and that's a competitive advantage.
I could do anything with this 10 million, right?
Anything.
Anything, great. I actually look at marketing by craft, and there's different parts of marketing. So there's brand marketing, there's field marketing, there's product marketing, there's events, there's all the different crafts within the marketing organization. And what I would do is create specialized teams that do growth hacking using AI. And the idea of it would be that there would be a centralized model of the data so we can all look at the data together, but being able to then constantly iterate and make it better and better and better. So we start to see the channels that are really working in those ways. I just see a world that the way that we use AI is based on that craft. You're going to do better go-to-market activities. You're going to do better field marketing activities. You're going to do better product marketing. I just truly believe that's where it's going to start. So that's where I would put all the dollars.
Al, what are you thinking, especially in the B2B space?
So I would actually invest it mostly in the people. Somebody said this to me the other day. They said, it's like your grandparents, where going to the internet was from flip phone to BlackBerry. We're going from BlackBerry to the iPhone, where now you have to understand the app world, and the apps do things, and you got things connected to the phone, right? It's a completely different environment. And I think what I've seen within my team is the faster we train up people to understand the value that they get, the more they will get from it. And I think we're trying to use tools to educate the team, or we need to educate the team to use the tools. So I would use a majority of that budget to get my entire organization just completely up to speed with AI, using it. And part of that would obviously be testing and piloting and everything else. But I think the education component of people understanding, it's moving so fast. Yeah. Like literally every month there is something new. Whether it's a desktop thing, whether it's on your phone, whether it's audio, whatever it may be, it's moving so fast that if we don't educate, we will fall behind.
I'm so very glad you brought that up. I mean, even in journalism, I certainly feel like I'm on a hamster wheel trying to catch up. You know, we're talking about talent, we're talking about tech, we're talking about capability and the next advantage. None of this matters, to your point, if organizations don't have the people and the capabilities required to put these tools to work. So would love to end just by talking about how you all are thinking about upskilling, reskilling, ensuring that, you know, your marketing teams know how to prompt, query, interrogate the data, and also translate those outputs into strategy and actual execution. So, I mean, it seems to you all are saying, and I know, Shelley, you said this at top conversation, we're not investing enough in helping marketers to actually develop the skills to really extract data from these tools. What does that look like in practice? Let me go back to you and start this off with you, Al.
Yeah, I think prompting is obviously where the world is today, is a key component to getting the answers you want. And so what we've done internally is had some of our kind of experts in the field go out and create those prompt libraries so that people have a place to start, right? It reminds me back when Google started, it was just the one line. It's like, well, what am I asking for? What am I looking for? If you don't know where to start, you're kind of stuck. So, giving people a prompt library saying start here, and then they go down this rabbit hole and they discover new things that we didn't even realize. But I think giving people a place to start is where we've kind of made an early investment.
And are your employees receptive? Let me double click, not just your employees, your younger employees receptive to using AI?
The younger ones are. You do feel that there is and maybe it's a news trend that like younger people feel like, oh, this might take my job. I think older people feel like this might take my job, and I'm, again...
Everyone feels like this might take their
it's
job.
more the grandparent thing, like this is new tech, I don't want to deal with this or learn this anymore. But I would say, generally speaking, like once you show them value, everybody has this aha moment. And so it's getting them to that point.
I think it starts at the top. I started my AI journey 8 months ago with Claude Code, and I started sharing that with my team and posting on LinkedIn, and I had lots of my folks going, Des, how'd you do this? And I said, I just went and learned on my own. And then every Friday, we basically show all the projects of what the teams are building. And it's been so wonderful. We also created a PMM marketplace where people are sharing the work that they're doing. They can join projects as well, too. And they're learning from each other. And I think it really starts where we're kind of showing the example of how we're doing it so that they say, oh, if my boss can do this, then I can do it, too. So I'm a big believer of that. And I think that as CMOs, we have to be hands-on keyboard.
I would say for us, the focus is to create the culture of learning mindset. And in my 30 years of career, I have to learn and relearn brand building so many times, from the world of television and Mad Men to, suddenly SEO. I had no idea what that meant. And now AEO on the other side. So how do we build that at scale in an organization is important. So I don't want to put in measures on how many people are using AI. And, we have tools available. But what we want to create is inspiration on what's possible. It's the examples that you guys are sharing. How do we bring more use cases of what's happening outside? Like, being here in Cannes is about getting inspired on creativity and what we can do there. And we're doing the same back in New York in our headquarters and in our regions. How do we bring best-in-class partners and best-in-class use cases from outside for people to then say, how can I think of my business problem differently? How do we create that constant learning mindset versus saying, I need 72% of the people to go now do something, because I'm not sure that is going to really drive the change that we need in the long term. And again, to your point, I mean, if people don't adopt to this change, they're going to be left behind. I mean, my parents were very worried when MTV came into India that, MTV is going to kill the culture back then, but it didn't. We survived.
I love that. They survived. Shelley.
No, I mean, my friends up here said it well. I agree, by the way, on the 28% that aren't using it. I mean, it's fine. Like, you don't have to use it, but like, bye. Because it's going to pass you by. But I think for me, there's a couple of things. One is you have to set the expectation that people will be experimenting. And I do it in every meeting, whether it's with teams that I lead that are consulting clients or with my marketing team. I expect it, and I ask the question, how have you used AI or technology to do whatever we just talked about? That's one. And I use the word experimenting very deliberately, because the real issue is actually that the technology is changing so quickly that if you're not in this learning mode, whatever you were doing 3 weeks ago is not relevant. Like they said, oh, Anthropic, they can't catch it, and then they got Claude Code, and it's like, oh, Anthropic, it's just crazy. Like Dario's going to own the whole beach next year, like it, whatever. Google, they can't, Gemini, like so. The reality of it is, we are still in the phase where stuff is happening so fast. You need your people experimenting so they actually know what models work best for what problems. And so I try to foster that. But then the last challenge is, then how do you scale what's working? Yeah. And I think that's actually where some of it breaks down.
Yeah. I think that's a solid place to end. I certainly also think that the biggest takeaway here is that AI isn't the strategy in and of itself. Unlocking growth-oriented value is, staying close to the customer, as you alluded to, Sandeep, is also where the value truly resides. Another takeaway, the companies that will win have already started measuring relentlessly. They're learning quickly. To Shelley's point, they're scaling what works. It's often where things break down. And also, if you can't connect AI to measurable business outcomes, it's simply experimentation, not transformation. Before we close out, Al, I'll give you the final word. I mean, at Demandbase, you're working with marketers across various industries. What are you just seeing in terms of where AI adoption is headed? What stands out to you?
Well, one is I don't think we need to be the Allbirds of the world. We're not just firing everybody and going AI.
Rest in peace.
But this is the year to create your benchmarks, right? Because it is moving fast. You're not going to have 12, 18 months to figure it out. You need to use the time now to get your benchmarks internally for your business, for the adoption that you have, and how you want to move forward. And then you just need to move fast. And you got to change the role and how you operate the business. And again, I think we're all in the same boat where we're figuring out what that exactly looks like. But you need to be moving now. The 28% that are not doing anything will not be around, and I think that has held true for over the years. It's seen over and over again. Create your benchmarks now.
And as you all figure it out, Fortune will be here waiting, watching, observing, and writing. Al, Desiree, Sandeep, Shelley, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you, everybody.